A racist officer points his gun at him for being black, but freezes when he sees the man calling the Pentagon. "Who the hell do you think you are, black? You're nothing but a pest in this city," shouted Officer Mason Riley as he aimed his weapon at the black man in his car. What the officer didn't know was that minutes later, a single call to the Pentagon would change the entire course of his life. It was a sweltering Tuesday afternoon in Atlanta, Georgia, the sun pounding on the streets as traffic dragged like a beast wounded beyond repair. On the corner of Peachtree and 10th Street, a black BMW sat paused in front of a coffee shop, its driver, a sharply dressed black man in a gray suit, quietly reviewing documents on his phone. Officer Mason Riley, burly, pale-skinned, irritated by the heat and by life itself, spotted the car from his cruiser and muttered, "What's a black guy doing in a BMW in this area?" His annoyance grew into hostility. He stepped out without lights or siren, approached the BMW with the disdain of someone confronting something beneath him, and hammered his knuckles against the window. "Drop the window. Now!" The glass lowered to reveal Julian Vance, a 34-year-old international defense consultant whose calm eyes clashed sharply with the officer's aggression. "Can I help you, officer?" he asked, but Riley snapped, ordering him to hand over documents and shut off his phone. When Julian asked the reason for the stop, Riley felt personally insulted. In seconds, he drew his pistol and aimed it directly at Julian's chest. "Out! Hands up where I can see them." Julian raised his hand slowly, insisting he had violated no law, but Riley's fury grew, his finger twitching on the trigger. The street was nearly empty, sunlight blazing on the pavement. Riley screamed for him to exit or be shot, and Julian inhaled deeply, lowering one hand just enough to lift his phone in plain view. Riley exploded, tearing the door open and thrusting the gun close to Julian's face. Shoved violently, Julian stepped out, still holding his phone, still composed. Riley barked for him to lie on the ground. When Julian refused to lie flat like a criminal, Riley shoved him again until he collapsed on the scorching pavement, his phone skidding aside. Riley planted a knee in his back and twisted his arm until pain shot through him. "Look at you, trash," Riley shouted, grinding Julian's cheek into the asphalt while a few bystanders watched, some silently horrified, one man in a red cap cheering the officer on. Julian tried to remain steady, but Riley's rage escalated. He yanked Julian upright and punched him in the stomach. Blood trickled from Julian's temple, yet his gaze stayed locked on Riley. "Are you sure you want to continue this?" he asked through clenched teeth. Confused, Riley looked around, but then his eye fell on the phone lying nearby, screen lit, vibrating, displaying an active call. Pentagon Operation Phoenix. His stomach twisted. He muttered, "What kind of trick is this?" Julian wiped his bloody lip, retrieved the phone, and spoke calmly into it. "Vance here. Atlanta, District 7. Contingency code Delta 3. A cold, metallic female voice answered. "Confirmed, Mr. Vance. Intervention protocol initiated." The murmuring crowd fell silent. Riley took a step back, fear mixing with disbelief. "Who are you?" he yelled, but Julian ignored him, instead activating the camera remotely. A flashing red dot appeared. "You're live now, officer." Audio and video streaming to the Department of Defense. Riley's bravado crumbled. He lowered his gun, stammering about misunderstandings, pretending he had perceived a threat. Julian stayed silent, eyes piercing. The voice on the phone returned. "Mr. Vance, we have full visual. Do you require Department of Justice notification or closed channel protection?" Riley swallowed hard, looking desperately toward the witnesses who now avoided his gaze. Sweat dripped from his temples as he realized every word, every shove, every racist insult was now preserved in federal servers. "Look, I didn't mean, I was just trying to," he began, but Julian cut him off sharply. "You said you mattered. We will see." The phone speaker clicked, and a firm male voice replaced the previous one. "This is Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, Pentagon Operations. Mr. Vance, confirm. Are you under active threat from an armed officer?" The air felt electrified. Riley froze, gun in hand, trembling, unsure whether to drop it or holster it, and unsure which choice could save him. Julian inhaled slowly, his suit dust-covered, his temple bleeding, and his voice measured as he lifted his eyes toward the terrified officer who moments before had called him worthless. He raised the phone closer to his lips, preparing to deliver the answer that could determine the fate of everyone present. The silence returned, heavy and total, as if the entire street itself were holding its breath. Julian did not answer immediately. He simply lifted his gaze toward Riley, who now trembled like a man standing on the edge of a cliff he never expected to fall from. Then, without breaking eye contact, Julian spoke with calm precision. Yes, confirmed. Direct threat. The voice on the phone hardened at once, becoming metallic and unquestionable. Confirmed. Federal units en route. Transmission secured. Maintain position, Mr. Vance. Do not confront the aggressor. Slowly, Julian lowered the phone, but his gaze never left the officer who had moments earlier believed himself untouchable. Riley's hands shook violently as he dropped his weapon, the gun clattering on the pavement. His voice, once booming with arrogance, fractured into something weak and almost childlike. "Who the hell are you?" he whispered. Julian's reply was soft but devastating. "Someone you had no right to touch." Sirens began to echo in the distance. Not blue and red, but a deep, rapid wail used only by federal units. The sound grew louder as black, unmarked vehicles approached. Pedestrians on the sidewalks stepped back, their earlier curiosity replaced by unease. Even the young man who had shouted earlier now stood frozen, mouth closed. Riley lifted his hand slightly. "It was a mistake," he stammered. "I didn't know who you were. I thought you looked suspicious. That's all." Julian stepped forward, casting a long shadow across the pavement. "You didn't need to know who I was," he said. "You only needed to act like a police officer." Another notification vibrated on the phone. Transmission confirmed. Level 1 internal review. Doors and windows along the block shut quietly as engines thundered closer. Soon, two black vehicles blocked both ends of the street. A firm voice barked from a loudspeaker. "Agent Riley, drop the weapon and step away from the civilian." Now, Riley's eyes widened with shock. "Agent Riley?" Julian repeated softly. Interesting title for a man who misuses his badge. Riley looked lost, cornered, breathing so fast it sounded like choking. But then panic hijacked him. "No, they're not ruining my life over him," he screamed, lunging for his patrol car. Julian remained motionless. A federal voice spoke through the radio. "Engine disabled." Riley tried the ignition, pounding the steering wheel, but the car stayed dead. Turning back, he spotted Julian still holding the phone, still recording, still calm. "You," he shouted, drawing his gun again. Julian did not flinch. "Halt," the federal voice commanded. "Drop the weapon, or you will be subdued." Riley broke into a run down a side alley, his final attempt at control collapsing into raw desperation. Three agents moved at once. Fast, silent, efficient, as if the chase bored them. Julian lowered the phone slightly, not in triumph, but in solemn certainty. A woman nearby asked, "What happens now?" Julian answered without looking at her. Now the system teaches him what accountability means. From the alley erupted a scream, then another, then the dull thud of a man subdued. A voice called out, "Target located, non-resistant." Proceeding with Level 2 retention. "Mr. Vance, the director wishes to speak with you." Julian took a slow breath, gave one last look toward the subdued officer, and ended the recording. He entered the federal vehicle without a word, the door closing behind him like the final punctuation of a sentence long overdue. 3 weeks later, the federal courtroom buzzed with reporters, activists, and officials. Riley entered wearing a wrinkled suit that fit him like borrowed clothing, his beard untrimmed, his expression hollow. Gone was the swagger, the arrogance, the confidence of a man who believed his badge made him a king. Now, he looked like a man who had seen himself clearly for the first time and hated what he saw. A massive screen displayed the footage captured that day. The gun aimed at Julian, the insults dripping with racism, the shove to the pavement, the knee pressed cruelly into his back. Riley flinched at every second, unable to meet the eyes of anyone in the courtroom. The prosecutor spoke firmly. Officer Riley abused his authority, used excessive force against an unarmed civilian, and acted with clear racial motivation. The victim was not only innocent, but a federal defense consultant with high-level clearance. This was not a mistake. This was targeted violence. Julian took the stand in a dark suit, a faint scar still visible across his eyebrow. His voice was calm, but carried the strength of someone who refused to be broken. "I do not seek revenge," he said. "I seek accountability. I have worked in nations where uniforms exist to intimidate, not protect. On that day, right here in my own country, I experienced that again." His words settled over the room like a weight. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, their verdict was clear: guilty of abuse of power, guilty of aggravated assault on a federal officer, guilty of obstructing an intelligence operation. The judge's sentence followed swiftly. 12 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole, permanent removal from law enforcement, and placement under mandatory oversight for racial misconduct. Riley was led away in cuffs. A reporter shouted, "Do you regret what you did?" Riley didn't answer, but the terror in his eyes told the truth. He did now. Too late.